Rachel Weisz, Rachel Weisz.
Stop there. I don't think we have even the Weird Al permission to go any further.
Rodgers and Hammerstein are going to have our heads on a pike.
Welcome to Your Inner Child is an Idiot, the podcast where we look back on things from our childhood and see if they're any good. My name is DJ.
And my name is Damon. Hello.
This is a movie from our young teenhood, or not even young teenhood, late teenhood.
We're very much pubescent, post-pubescent.
We're talking about, speak for yourself, buddy.
My testicles were still firmly tucked into my body cavity.
I'm like an F-18. I like to just, when I'm moving fast, I like to tuck them up, you know?
Oh, yeah, aerodynamics.
We're talking about 1999's Brendan Fraser's, Rachel Weisz's The Mummy. Do you have particular memories associated with this movie?
Thank you for asking.
17, 18 when this came out, right?
17. Yeah, I remember it being one of the summer before I went off to college. That may not be true, but it feels true. Doesn't it feel true?
And isn't that what really matters?
Your Honor. I do remember seeing this movie. I remember it being, it wasn't like a watershed moment like Jurassic Park or something, but I remember all the other youths being excited to see this. It may have been like one of the first movies of the summer, and so it was like I feel like when you're in school, like that first big summer blockbuster is like the telltale sign of like, we're going to get out of here. We're all going to be staying up late and watching The Mummy at the Cineplex. With all our fourth form chums,
and then heading to the malt shop.
I had few friends. I should note. I'm gonna get
how
malt.
Things have changed.
A chocolate phosphate from me and my friends. So I feel like there was like a feeling of somewhat excitement about this movie. It was also like a big CGI movie when we were still learning the ropes a little bit, still trying to figure things out, feel our way around.
Speaking of barely post-pubescent. CGI was in its early post-pubescence.
Yeah. A little gangly. Its legs were longer than its arms. It tripped a lot. Hair where there wasn't hair before. That didn't happen until Monsters, Inc., though, technically.
That's true. I actually don't think I saw this when it came out, like in the theater. And I remember seeing it and thinking it looked stupid and was not interested in it.
You got a good eye. I'm not going to lie to you.
And then I dated a girl, and when I was in college, we were long distance relationship, and this was her favorite movie or one of her favorite movies. And so I don't know if you went through this in the college thing of like, I have to show you this. You have never seen that? I mean, people are still like that, but I think in college it gets really bad because you're like,
I am notoriously bad. I am. Yeah. I could be brought up on war crimes for the number of times I was like, hey guys, let's all sit around and watch Silence of the Lambs because Bethany's never seen it at least 3 times. So let's just watch it again.
Well, I think it's, you start to attach your personality to these things. And so you become the, you know what I mean? And that, like we talked about with Lord of the Rings, you're the Lord of the Rings guy because, and so she wasn't like crazy about it. She didn't like dress up like Brendan Fraser and go adventuring or anything. But like,
true. But The Mummy being your favorite movie, it sounds crazy to me.
Well, and we ended up not having a lot of. We did not agree on what was high art in a lot of ways. So it was not like that big of a bone of contention. But it was definitely like I remember I watched it with her and then was like, I still think this is stupid. Now, in retrospect, I think that my young self was too cynical? Maybe it'll be a fun romp, Damon.
Sometimes you got to let the magic of the movies wash over you, and that's what The Mummy's all about.
When if there's one person who can just help me suspend my disbelief, it's Brendan Fraser.
Yes, we were riding a wave with him at the time. Of course,
were we?
Well, yeah, you got your
he was still on that mid-90s wave.
You got those Encino men. You've got those schools that are tied. Surely there was another thing in there that we were liking him for. George of the Jungle. It's not
with honors.
it's not a chapter heading in my latent homosexuality, but it's definitely like a footnote, like watching George of the Jungle after we rented it from that weird Christian video store, watching with my parents and being like, I don't know if I want to watch this with my
They didn't have porn, but they did have George of the Jungle.
They had George of the Jungle and they had Men's Health magazine. The only other thing I remember about this movie is that I found Rachel Weisz's eyebrows offensive beyond belief.
Really?
They are so atrocious. And she's kind of an Elaine Bennis in that she went from having the absolute worst eyebrows in Hollywood history to having some of the best eyebrows now.
Okay. All right.
The connection to Elaine, by the way, is that Elaine was voted worst hair on TV, and then she switched like within 2 seasons and had the best hair on TV. That was a very specific reference that only an audience of me would understand.
People that are into both Seinfeld and People Magazine or whatever the fuck that came from.
Of eyebrow plucking. But her eyebrows, I mean, there's part of me that like likes that this movie is set in the 1920s and women were obliterating their eyebrows off of their skulls at the time. So there is part of me that's like, well, they really is stuck to the verisimilitude of the 1920s in this action-adventure fantasy movie about a mummy attacking Egypt. But
so did she like basically shave them off and draw them back on in this movie? I don't remember her eyebrows.
I mean, surely you remember just the nadir in eyebrow science that was the 2000s where both women and gay men were just ripping them off as much as they possibly could. And sometimes...
gotta be honest, I missed most of it. I don't know what you're talking about.
The girls and the boys who were a little bit more hirsute, you would see sort of a shadow of an eyebrow that was still there, like that had been plucked to oblivion. I mean, they would just have like the thinnest of parentheses over their eyes. It was obscene.
Like when someone who has like, who's
5 o'clock shadow.
Yeah, whose 5 o'clock shadow pops in really quickly. They no matter how much they shave, there's still like a gray like Homer Simpson. You get the Homer Simpson
thing. Fred Flintstone thing. But yeah, but imagine that on the ridge of your skull here. It's not a good look.
As the owner of 2 magnificent caterpillars, I can say I actually didn't notice that.
Well, you will now.
I'm sure I'll notice nothing else.
Tyler does say that I am a little too obsessed with eyebrows, and I will criticize eyebrows beyond belief.
Yeah.
And
Jealousy.
that's not true. That's very much true. I am very picky about eyebrows. LT, friend of the pod, she texted me the other day about Bo Burnham, and she's first off, she said he was hot, which I thought was odd, but I said that his
didn't watch that new special yet, huh?
His eyebrows are too far apart. He shaves. He looks like he takes a razor and just goes straight down. And so his eyebrows look like they're like 2 lovers reaching for each other, but the train's already leaving the station.
They look exactly a Gillette apart.
Yeah, they do.
So The Mummy, this is not the one where The Rock is in. That's the second one, right? Where
you will
he's
not
the Scorpion.
see any The Rock. You will not see any Dwayne Johnsons in this
because I want to talk about that eventually too, because I remember that CG, even in I think the trailer, you're like, what are we doing here? But this one is the one where at one point we do get like the massive face in like the sandstorm, right?
Yeah, I think that was the big image that they used in all the marketing.
I don't remember that being especially good or bad, so I guess we'll just have to see.
I think that like sort of texture stuff was the strength of CGI at the time, but it was well, we'll just have to see. I don't want to get into it too much. Oh, also, there is a fun connection to Steel Magnolias in that the guy who plays Daryl Hannah's husband, Bobbert, is in this movie as the shady Egyptian who steals everything. Even saying that made me want to take a bath. Let me find that character actor's name. Please. You know, the guy with the sunken eyes.
Are you going to use DuckDuckGo? Going to use Bing? What are you going to use here?
I'm going to mostly use Lycos, but thank you.
Little dog pile.
Ooh, Brendan Fraser. What happened? Kevin J. O'Connor plays Benny, but he was Daryl Hannah's boyfriend / husband / baby daddy in Steel Magnolias.
Is this the one that got the British guy too?
There is a British guy in this. He's Rachel Weisz's brother, I think, in the movie.
Okay. All right. What's the deal with Rachel Weisz? And there's some video that became a meme, right? Of her like Was it like her and Catherine Hahn having just a magnetic moment at like a round table
there
or something?
Was sort of
I vaguely remember that.
There was a meme going around lesbian Twitter, I believe, for a while of just you could see Catherine Hahn just sort of looking at Rachel Weisz. They were in an interview together. I don't know if it was like just a panel show
like
or
a Vanity Fair,
but one of those things where like, let's get a cadre of actors together and talk about how rough it is to act or great it is to act or whatever the vibe of the moment is. And you could just see Catherine Hahn just looking at Rachel with a sense of longing, or maybe we projected that onto her, but it felt that way. It has a gay partner though, where Taron Egerton and Hugh Jackman were doing an interview for some movie that no one saw, and Taron Egerton, who's like, I don't know, from the looks of things, he looks like he's 4'10". He's looking up very adoringly at Hugh Jackman, and so that's the pairing there. Oh, you want to get a bookend for your meme library? That's it.
Please. And once again, this has been DJ and Damon describe memes through the magic of audio. So
describe animated GIFs.
We are going to watch The Mummy. Watch along with us. We'll be right back. You've made it this far into the episode. You probably... You tolerate Damon, but you like me. If you want to support what I'm doing, you want to support general tolerance of Damon, patreon.com/your inner child is an idiot. He doesn't see a dime of this. Just so you guys know, there's a fat reserve of cash that only I can access. And you can add to it, patreon.com/your inner child is an idiot.
Fine enough.
It's my treasure trove that I will be buried with, like the pharaohs of old.
Now, see, you tied it into the episode. That's what I like about it.
Yeah. Imhotep.
Imhotep. I like a pep rally.
Did that sound like you were chanting with me, or did it because you were like a half second behind?
I don't have the best beat in the world, so, and every time I thought it was the last time, and then you would do one more, so then I'd try and hop in, and it happened like 3 times in succession where I kept trying to hop in on what I thought was the last one.
I can't tell if it's a computer delay or if you have absolutely no sense of rhythm.
Let's go with computer delay.
Little column A. We're back. We watched The Mummy, or El Mummy in Spanish. Do you want to? I think I want to recap this. Can I recap it?
Ooh, look at you hoarding all the mummy straps. Go on.
There's this. We're in ancient Egyptian times. There's this high priest Imhotep. He's just trying to get his swerve on. He's just trying to get his groove on.
Okay.
He's trying to get his groove on with the pharaoh's lady. What's the problem? I'll tell you what the problem is. The pharaoh finds out. He has Imhotep buried alive with scarab beetles, which gives him powers for reasons. And thousands of years later, we fast forward to Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz discovering the cursed mummy, and then he attacks them because he wants to bring his beloved back from the dead, and he needs Rachel's body or something.
It's a classic Dracula situation. You just find the nearest girl who has a rough approximation to the girl you lost, and just sort of like glom onto her.
What are you about?
Girls love that.
What are you about? 5 hands tall? Yeah, you're about the same.
What are you, a solid cubit?
The mummy wreaks havoc for a while, but eventually is defeated and sent into the nether world, never to return again, I'm sure, in the next movie. So
probably a different mummy.
Yeah. But you know what? The mummy may have been separated from his love for all eternity, but you know who wasn't? Brendan and Rachel, they get together at the end.
Ah, thank God the two most attractive people in the movie got together. Actually, the most attractive woman in the movie, and then the second most attractive man in the movie. I kind of like that guy who had the, the Arabic on his.
Yeah.
The guy with the glasses is all right, but the guy with the Arabic on under his eyes, like a football player.
Yeah,
he's all right. He had a thick head of hair, a solid head of hair.
The sun is really bright. You want to keep it from reflecting off of your cheek when you're trying to catch a baseball. That's mainly what that's for.
And sometimes you'll write a Bible verse in there for reasons. Yeah. We fucking don't know John 3:16 at this point. Tim Tebow, get out of here. Who do you think you're winning over at this point?
Yeah, that's
plus God, do some work. Why do I have to go to the reference library and look it up?
John 3:16. That's Job getting smote with boils, right? That's
no, that's ground control to Major Tom, I think.
Okay.
John 3:16. I have a question at the root of the premise of this movie, and maybe you can help me out. Did ancient Egypt, when someone committed a crime, did they ever think of just killing them?
Why? Also, why
rather than giving them magical powers to come back 3,000 years later?
They seem to know this would happen, that there would be consequences. But like, I kind of understand the torturing, like I'm not saying I'm
I can get behind torturing. No, I get it.
No, I'm not saying I support it. I'm just saying I understand the motivations behind it. They're like, this guy fucked up so bad, we're gonna bury him alive with scarab beetles that are gonna eat him from the inside out. Okay, that is a very mean punishment.
So DJ is pro enhanced interrogation techniques. Continue,
hey man,
DJ.
If it works, it works. Put a boot up your ass.
Ugh. You know? It's the Egyptian way.
It doesn't work, you say? Well, let me follow that up with a question. Or does it?
Studies show actually it doesn't.
It definitively doesn't. So, does it though?
Again, I have to refer to those previous studies and some subsequent studies that it actually doesn't work.
I'm just going to keep punching this guy. So, that I understand, that part of it. What I don't understand is how it gives him magic powers, but whatever, it's a movie. Okay, how is not important. But then also why? Like, why give this
You're like
person...
a journalist. You're asking the 5 important questions. Who, Imhotep, and how do you spell that, Mr. Oh, you're sort of creating a sandstorm? Okay, I'll come back to that question. How, magic...
Okay, fine.
Why, though, is where my sticking point.
That's what I get stuck on.
That's where the rubber meets the road.
Back to how, is that how scarab beetles work? Because I don't think it is. I'm not saying they
hibernate on pieces of gold, I guess, for thousands of years, and then they'll crawl under your skin?
Yeah, that was pretty gross.
They kind of look like when Bugs Bunny was traveling somewhere, you know? He had the little... the little trail, and then,
should have taken a left at Albuquerque.
Yeah, that's what those scarab beetles are thinking.
Rewinding a little bit, the very beginning we get like a bustling ancient Thebes, which I thought was actually really cool because you can tell it was like they spent a lot of time and money kind of like
in the
setting
ancient
up
Egypt part.
Yes, yeah, they set it up like, this is what it was like. I don't know how accurate it was, but everything's like shiny and shimmering, and there's people all around, and there's it's all very colorful, and I thought that was really cool.
It definitely looked like a cutscene from Civilization 5.
Yes,
available on Apple iOS and Microsoft products. It had that thing of being. I mean, we'll get to the CGI, I'm sure, copiously in this movie. This is probably the best example of CGI in it.
CGI
it's hard to... It feels like a lot of in-camera techniques here on The Mummy, parentheses 99. A lot of just down-to-earth, a lot of grounded... just
kind of breezed right by
work.
It. Didn't even see it.
The best special effects, TJ? Your imagination. That's what I always say.
Yeah. That's why they don't show the Mummy until like an hour and a half into the movie.
Plus, there were a lot of mechanical problems with the Mummy, so they couldn't really get him to work until Roy Scheider was out on that boat.
We're gonna need a bigger sarcophagus. I like that we get right into the messy Thebes drama. Like there's like like immediately a soap opera. Like these two hotties are in love. But it's so they're star-crossed lovers because he's the high priest who I guess did he already kind of have magical powers? I feel like they didn't show him doing anything magical, but it's kind of inferred that he had some sort of sorcery thing going on.
Well, we don't really see him do anything except, multiply stab the pharaoh in the back, literally and figuratively. I don't know if he actually has magical powers or if that's bestowed to him in some cruel joke of the afterlife. But yeah, he seems to be some sort of priest, and he has what is he referred to as? He has priests under him who do his bidding.
He's the high priest, right?
Oh, okay. That's how it works.
I think so. Mm-hmm. And then
assistant vice priest.
And then the pharaoh is it his wife?
No, it's his mistress. They referred to her as his mistress.
Favorite mistress that no man can touch, and that she's painted all over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they were just trying to be cute or if he actually paints her so he can keep track of who's touching her.
I don't know. It worked either way.
Yeah. Good on you, Pharaoh. You're a bit sex negative, but good on you. You have a goal, and you have creative means of attaining it.
What I like about this, another thing I like about this movie, is that it's a realistic interpretation of gun use and gun ownership.
Oh my God.
Because whenever you run out of bullets, this was in the 1920s, and this is pretty accurate to the era, you had to just throw the guns.
Yeah, that gun's spent. You got to get a whole new gun. Yeah, this movie, I can't tell if it's NRA porn or an NRA worst nightmare. Just due to the fact that at one point I was surprised that no one just opened a can of beans with a gun at any point. There's a scene later in the movie where there's a mirror tilted in the wrong direction, and Brendan Fraser shoots it so that it tilts in the correct direction. And I'm like, okay, movie, this is getting a little out of control, to the point where I was getting a little bit into the guns. How just absolutely ludicrous. Like this director, I want to look up the director's name because Stephen Sommers, there are at least 600 shots in this movie of people rounding a corner and immediately drawing at least two guns on whoever's on the other side of the corner. It happens over and over and over again. And I almost appreciated it because there was a scene when they do it where they're walking into a library and they immediately draw guns when they turn a corner, and someone says, "Do you want to ask us what we're doing here, or do you just want to shoot us?" And I was like, I'm glad someone said something. Yeah, because when you get startled by someone around the corner, you just go, you don't immediately draw guns on them. Or I don't.
You're not a very good
treasure hunter. What is his job title? What the fuck is Brendan Fraser's job title here?
He's not Indiana Jones.
He's a ne'er-do-well.
Yeah, he is a kind of mercenary treasure hunter. Because what army was he fighting for in the beginning?
DJ, these are all great questions. The movie can't get into
he's an American.
It right now. Yeah,
he's an American.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
mm-hmm. He's shooting copious amounts of brown people. The opening scene, I mean, not the opening scene, but the first scene in the modern times in 1923, I think, is the first scene after the ancient Egypt prologue. He's just with Benny, the ne'er-do-well Egyptian character, played by our friend from Steel Magnolias, and they're just fighting Arabs. They're just fighting Middle Easterners. And he's with other Middle Easterners. It's not explained who anyone is in relation to anyone else. Why are we shooting people? My note here is, who are we shooting? And that I never got an answer. Actually, this first scene is very interesting because it felt like it was sort of tacked in after the fact.
Yeah.
Because he is, eventually, his entire squad that he was fighting with escapes. Benny... Oh, Benny, you scoundrel.
Bye, Benny.
He runs away and leaves Brendan Fraser sort of cornered by these other people, the other army, who then run away because they see a mysterious thing.
Well, Brendan Fraser releases the mummy. It's completely his fault.
Well,
Not at
that was also
later,
confusing because
right?
he does that later. But here, there's a shot of just like a face in the sand.
Yeah.
And then he wanders back to, I guess, Cairo. And then we're sort of reintroduced to him later, and he's got long hair.
He's been in prison.
And he's been in prison for 3 years. There's like a time jump almost immediately. After we just got from ancient Egypt, there's a 3-year time jump. And when Rachel Weisz meets him, I'm going to keep calling her Rachel Weisz. When Rachel Weisz meets him, he's in prison, he has these long hair, and then there's sort of like a glow-up scene later when they actually hire him, and I was a little confused because like, we already know what he looks like with his hair short because there's a prologue scene. So it felt like that first scene was like tacked on to add like an action beat. But it also makes no sense because the mummy's face appears in the sand.
Explain why Benny exists or something.
Right. I think they just wanted to add an action sequence because he also keeps referencing it. He references it a few times in the first few scenes where he's like, the only thing we found there was sand and blood. And I'm like, actually, it seemed like a kind of comical fight against nameless armies. It didn't seem that bad, honestly. I don't know. It just seemed kind of tacked in after the fact. Only watching it the second time, it seemed weird.
We get introduced to Rachel Weisz's character. I'm just gonna keep calling her that. Rachel Weisz. This character, the zoixiest librarian I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. When she starts running, she runs in place for a few seconds and then she goes. Or she runs so fast that she leaves a cloud that looks exactly like it.
Right.
Confusing the mummy.
In a comedy of errors, she knocks over the entire library, which is set up in a circle for some reason.
Yeah, all the bookshelves are set up in a circle that she knocks down, not unlike dominoes.
What do you think the sort of narrative purpose of having her be kind of an idiot, a smart idiot, you know? What was I trying? Was it just trying to make her lovable or something? Because it felt really like, because I don't think she really continued that later. She didn't all of a sudden become.
Although she does release a fucking mummy to terrorize all of Egypt for a minute.
That's true.
Which is maybe classic klutz move.
So I guess there it is. We're setting up this fucking idiot.
This fucking idiot. I will say I kind of found her very charming. Well, okay, very is a strong word. I found her charming in this.
Yes.
Mostly because of the klutziness. It at least gave her something to do rather than just be a pretty lady, but also something to do other than just be like the exposition dump machine.
Yeah.
Gave her a little bit of character, and it's sort of, I don't know. I don't know if anyone is really a strong character in this movie.
She's somewhat developed, and she does become a kind of damsel in distress later, which is a little frustrating because not that she was like super capable adventurer, but she was like kind of very strong-willed and smart, even though she was klutzy and maybe a little irresponsible with the sort of
never
very
read
ancient
books.
Well, just like the ancient relics, she's like burning, like they're all like burning ancient maps. I guess that guy did it on purpose, though. I guess we later learned.
Yeah, I think we later realized he's part of a secret society.
But Rachel Weisz and her brother are just like clumsy and really cavalier with all these ancient artifacts.
Well, yeah, that is true. But it's also the 20s. Which
That's true.
I was like,
and they're colonialists.
Shit. Yeah, they're colonialist people in the 1920s, and there weren't just as much regulation with archaeology. It was just like, here, toss these things around, these 1,000-year-old keys and parchments and what have you. Touch them with your bare hands. Why wouldn't you? I guess one of the
take
other
a shit on the cartouche. What do I care?
She is sort of a comic relief character, and there are a lot of comic relief characters in this.
Yeah,
which I think plays into why they chose to make her a sort of a klutz. Her brother, who kind of looks like if you left Benedict Cumberbatch out in the sun. He's shriveled a little bit. He's kind of like just a cavalier rich boy. He feels like he might be like sort of almost based on Nick Charles from The Thin Man, just like sort of, a functioning alcoholic who doesn't really know what he's doing. And then you have Brendan Fraser, who is definitely, based on Indiana Jones, but almost like, what if Indiana Jones was played by a whiny teenager? You've got Benny, who's this sniveling, greedy, opportunistic Egyptian character. You have the mummy, who was just a laugh riot, of course. Just kidding. He was barely sentient, it felt like. It felt like everyone was just sort of like in for the laughs.
I feel like this.
I don't know if it was always so successful. It was like, okay, not everyone can be comic relief.
Right.
Without it actually turning into a comedy at some point.
We do get some good, like, some funny little character beats. Like, so there's like the warden of the prison that Brendan Fraser is in. He eventually lets, after trying to kill him, they get out, and then he comes along, and then there's a moment where
he was that's Warden Gad Hassan. He's played by Omid Jali, who is a character actor I've seen in a few things. He comes along because basically to get Brendan Fraser released, Rachel Weisz promises him like 25% of the gold at this city. The city that they're headed towards is a mythical city that no one thinks exists, but is supposed to be home to a huge treasure. Well, Imhotep's the mummy.
No, him. Oh, yeah. What is it called? Him.
Hamunapta. Yeah.
Hamunapta. But that we get this moment though when I don't remember what he's tying up, but Brendan Fraser's character is like tying something up, and he keeps whipping like the warden in the face with the rope, just like gently like hitting him with it. Mm-hmm. I thought that was really funny, actually.
He also gets a running gag where he sort of doesn't know what everyone should be doing, and so he'll ask Brendan Fraser or someone else, and Brendan Fraser will give him the exact opposite instruction. Like when the boat is burning, and he's like, "What do we do? What do we do?" I can't remember what Brendan Fraser says, but it's not jump off the boat, which Brendan Fraser
he goes, "I'll go get help. Stay here. I'll go get help."
And then when the guy just sort of stands there for a minute, and then he realizes he's being mocked.
Ooh,
and he goes,
guy who has a name. What is his name? Rick. Is it Rick?
You mean the warden character?
No, our main character.
Oh, great.
Rick
you
O'Connell?
with a lot of great questions. Rick O'Connell, yes. I definitely didn't have to look it up on IMDb.
It's just such an iconic name. That's why I recalled it from the top of my head so quickly.
Let's talk about this movie wears its heart on its sleeves, meaning its inspiration's on its sleeve. I mean, of course, it's inspired by the Boris Karloff 30s edition, but it's also very much inspired by Indiana Jones. It has a very Indiana Jones vibe to it. But one of the things that kind of annoyed me is that one of the things I love about Indiana Jones movies, and they have their problems, and I'll get into that when we start talking about the people of color in this movie, but one of the things I like about the Indiana Jones movies is that as an audience member, you're sort of going along on this adventure and getting the clues as Indiana Jones finds them and learning about the clues as he discovers them. In this movie, it just feels like people are just coming out of the woodwork and just like giving us clues and telling them what their significance is. After what's her name knocks off all the bookcases, she just goes into what appears to be some sort of catacomb. There's a torchlit catacomb just off of the library she just destroyed, where her brother is hanging out in a sarcophagus with a corpse. He's like, "Hey, I found this in Thebes." And she's like, "Oh my goodness, it's a key." And then it opens and she's like, "Oh my gosh, there's a parchment and a map inside this key." I'm like, wow, we're really just getting these plot points right out of the way. And then later when they hire Brendan Fraser, there's a point where they're searching for the city and he just sort of stops waiting for the sun to rise. And they're like, "What are we doing here?" And he's like, "We're waiting for the sun to show us the way." And then the sun rises and the city just sort of appears. And I'm like, was that something?
Did they say that, or
is that a clue that I missed at some point in my
two viewings? It was on the map. Did you not see the map?
You didn't pause the map while you were in the movie theater in 1999? It was just like, okay, I mean, I guess this is kind of a cool idea, but it would have been cooler, I think, if you had sort of like left a little breadcrumb to learn about this.
Right.
But instead it felt like they were like, what's an interesting way of finding a city that's not just having a city somewhere? What if we do some sort of CGI trick to make the city just suddenly appear? I don't know, that sort of thing got a little tiresome. It felt stupid.
That's a good point. I was trying to actually pinpoint, and I think you've already done a better job than I did thinking about it. I was trying to pinpoint why Indiana Jones, not all of them and not all parts of them, like works better than this, because you can't just be like, well, it's a classic and this one is, because it's like, well, why do I care about that character? And part of it is like, Harrison Ford, but also I
Harrison
think
Ford's much more charming than Brendan Fraser.
But you just see, I think that you have part of it there is that like he's kind of like we love Indiana Jones because he's brave, but we also love him because he's kind of cowardly and also in different ways. He's like he's craven, but in a like brave way, if that makes sense. He's in it for the money until he's not. You know what I mean? He's a multifaceted character, but not too contradicting. You know what I mean? Where it makes sense that he's a person. Whereas Rick is just like, he's just swashbuckling his whole way through this movie. And I actually don't really, because he's kind of in it for some sort of reward. He begins to believe in the mummy's curse immediately. And then, which understandably, given the circumstances, but then...
Well, with all the death and the mummies and stuff.
Right. But then he doesn't like do anything about that other than sort of like draw guns faster, I guess. And then he does like begin to care about Rachel Weisz's character, but I don't know. It doesn't quite sell it for me. And maybe it's because it's not supposed to be subtle. Like this movie, for all its faults, does kind of know what it is definitely stepping into the goofiness, the cheesiness, the sort of like schlock. They're definitely nodding to the 30. When was the 30s mummy?
Yeah, I think the 1930s when the Boris Karloff mummy came out. Mummy.
The mummy. But I think we can agree that the mummy's right on about cats. Am I...
Stupid. Just this one weird fact about him that he hates cats. It's used like in one scene and then it's never brought up again. Just
bring that cat with you when you go. What's going on?
Or wear like a cat shirt, maybe.
Also not important, but whose cat is that? Is somebody feeding that cat? Is it okay?
Yeah, I guess it's the hotel's cat.
Okay. All right. Okay. Guess
like I chalked it up to the 1920s. Like, yeah, they probably would have had cats just roaming around. No, I agree with you on that. I think this movie knows sort of what it is. It definitely wants to be a little bit of a sort of a 90s Indiana Jones where it doesn't take itself too seriously. There's a lot of jokes, a lot of goof 'em ups.
They don't even pretend to be, there's an anachronistic language or like slang and stuff. And they don't even pretend to like be speaking like they're in the 1920s, which I think is fine. Like it didn't bother me in the slightest, which I think Indiana Jones kind of does too. They don't.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, I do agree that I don't understand what Rick O'Connell's... I had trouble understanding what he was in it for. Is he just in it because he thinks Rachel Weisz is hot? I mean, they did obviously hire him because he found the city.
Right.
But it's like, what is your job and why are you better than Benny? Aren't you both treasure hunters and aren't you both sort of opportunistic, sell swords, as they would say in Game of Thrones? Like you're soldiers for hire or whatever. So he obviously has some sort of moral code that's stronger than Benny's, but I don't know if I get a full like understanding of what Rick O'Connell's O'Connell? What his deal is. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to keep comparing him to Indiana Jones, but Indiana Jones does have a good mix of like brave in that he throws himself into weird situations, but also cowardly in that he's not afraid to throw sand into the eye of some Nazi he's fighting. He's not like, I'm going to do a fair fight.
Well, and to be fair, like to not to like get away from the Indiana Jones comparison, the director in a interview like gave the Errol Flynn comparison. He was looking for like a swashbuckling kind of like brave just because he's brave kind of thing, which I think they did sort of get that. They nailed it, but like I want a little bit, maybe I just want too much as far as like development. I want to kind of like believe that he's either sort of I don't know. It just kind of was a little bit more, it felt a little flat for me. It felt a little like two-dimensional. Like
yeah, I mean, there are a few moments where, like, his portrayal, like I said earlier, feels kind of like a whiny teenager. Sometimes that like sarcasm sort of borders into it doesn't like lead to a coherent character. Like there's a scene where, the boat burns and they, have to, abandon ship, and Brendan Fraser's party is on one side of the river and Benny's party is over here on the other side of the river. And Benny's sort of gloating that he got all the horses and equipment. There's sort of the writing isn't really bad, but Brendan Fraser's reading is, "You're on the other side of the river." I remember hearing that. I'm like, why are you saying it like that? Yeah. It just seems like you're taunting another basketball team. And there are just a few moments like that where I'm like, I don't know. He just does not work for me. Like, what are you? And are you supposed to be charming? Because you ain't charming. You seem really kind of whiny and annoying.
Speaking of sports, I felt like the way that there's like a zombie army that comes as one of the plagues that the Mummy has released, and they keep just chanting Imhotep's name, but like they're at a baseball game. It's like Imhotep, Imhotep, na-na-na-na-na. Like
we're supposed to be stamping on the bleachers.
Yeah. And one guy's in the corner going,
Actually, you touched on something I did want to talk about that I thought it was weird. This almost feels like the writers were like, what do we know about ancient Egypt? We know they got pyramids. We know they got mummies. We know about the 10 plagues of Exodus. And it's like, why would the Mummy release the 10 plagues of the Judeo-Christian God that he released on Egypt? It just seems like, let's do this. This is something people think about when they think about Egypt. Let's just do the 10 plagues. And the plagues they just sort of run through Act 2. They're real quick. Yeah. You blink and you'll miss the sun, sun eclipse.
They just breezed right over the killing of the firstborn sons for some reason in this PG
in this blockbuster movie. Popcorn movie.
Yeah.
Plus they alter the boils and lesions plague to be and also mind control. I forgot.
Right.
Like, they have boils and lesions. Also, there's a zombie army now.
He was inspired by the plagues, I think.
It's like great artistry. Like, you may not like Picasso as a person,
right?
But damn, if he doesn't do a great cubist painting. And that's probably what Imhotep was like.
It was like Precious was based on the novel Push by Sapphire, but it wasn't like to the letter. Can we talk about the CGI? Are we there yet? Can we just talk about it?
Let's go. I want to say, this is my favorite thing, is that my first note about the CGI, of which there are many, is that we know what the moon looks like. The moon is CGI in this movie, and it looks ludicrous. It's like blue. It's obviously just like clip art. They pasted in there. It's so bad. I'm like, just take a shot of the moon.
You don't have to do that on this one.
Save yourself, $10,000 and just get a shot of the moon.
I feel like, okay, so just to zoom out for a second, they like went hard for the CGI in this movie.
I wrote, it was they dug too greedily and too deep.
They decided this is going to be a horror a horror adventure, very CGI heavy movie, and they did that. So kudos to you. You spent the money. Let me talk about what was good.
Yeah, let's start there. Let's start with the positives.
So when they discover Imhotep's body for the first time, he's like a juicy mummy. He's like an unbandaged skeleton kind of thing. That was scary when he was still like immobile. Then he comes to life. Okay, it's a little less scary because he's walking around and it's a little janky, but I still think it was effective because you see him like basically he has to kill the people who opened his tomb, his sarcophagus, which is all the Americans that came with Benny.
And the more he kills, the more he sort of
he gets his body.
He gets his body pieces back.
Stella gets her body pieces back. And so like before the last one, he's just got like a hole in the side of his cheek or something.
Yeah.
So that. Okay, even though like to say that was good is not correct, but that I liked that concept, and I think they did sort of like pull off what they were trying to do in terms of like I got what they were saying. You know what I mean?
You got what they were saying. This mummy has no body parts. He needs them from them.
I'm trying to think of what else I liked. What did you have any other?
Let me see here.
the wall mummies. So at some point towards the end, just armies of mummies are coming out of everywhere, and Imhotep wakes up his priests that we see at the very, very beginning, and they're all mummified too. And two of them are like
in the
Muppet
wall?
Yeah, they're like Muppets in the labyrinth. They like are part of the wall and they come out. I was like, oh, wall mummies.
And then later, some guards come out, and I'm like, who are you guys?
Well, I thought they were the Pharaoh's guards.
Why would they come to defend?
Yeah, which doesn't make sense, because eventually they do change, like, who's the brother? Whatever the brother's name is. He gets the gold book, which is the better book. And
the book of life. There's the book of death and the book of life.
He reads from it and eventually gets them under his control, and they attack Imhotep. But I'm not sure why they wouldn't originally be under Imhotep's power, because they were like the Pharaoh's guards in the very beginning.
Unless he can just control whoever he wants.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know what kind of fucking powers they gave
By the
this
end,
guy.
they were just like, and more zombies, please. More mummies. Bring in more mummies. And I imagine they just had just like a big, like one of those Z racks from a big like retail store just full of mummies coming in.
Bring
more
out
mummies.
your dead.
I do want to say, you were talking about the mummy when he comes back to life. I want to say he does have a nice ass on that mummy.
Oh, yeah.
Real mummies have curves. I was like, you'd think that's one of the first things that would go.
Right, the butt.
Because it's all fat. No, kept it
Keeping it
3,000 years.
Keeping it toit in the afterlife. I think that's true of Imhotep in general. He's keeping it toit.
No, yeah.
You see a lot of butt. You see a lot of Imhotep butt.
Well,
Not a lot, but enough.
So Imhotep, who is played by not Billy Zane, that's what I had to keep reminding myself.
Yes.
Throughout the thing of this. I will say some of the CGI around sand is pretty good, I think. But I mean, Imhotep, when he's like still working on, he's still got his goals of, getting tongues and eyes and etc.
It's good to have goals.
You
want to see,
good.
look, find your destination and work backwards. Mm-hmm. That's what I say.
Yeah. Visualize it.
Yeah.
Positive affirmations. Every time you wake up, every 3,000 years when you wake up, you want to say, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to accomplish today. What are my goals and what am I doing to accomplish it?
You just got to make time for yourself in the morning,
Also, don't undersell relaxation. I know we all got to hustle, mummy, but don't forget, self-care is important. So he steals a poor man's eyes and a poor man's tongue, as some might say, and it looks absolutely horrendous when he gets it into his body. It just looks...
Yeah.
It's just... I guess it drives me insane when these turn-of-the-century movies just have someone who is... He's got 2 arms and 2 legs and a head, and they're like, let's do CGI. And I'm like, why don't you just do a man? Have you ever thought about doing like a man? It drove me insane with Jar Jar Binks. It drives me, I mean, it's even more annoying here because he's just a guy. Just, why do you have to like create the whole thing? And then to have him stand, like there's a scene, fairly long scene with Benny, where the mummy and him are face to face in the same shot. And I'm like, ooh, you don't want to give me a reference.
Don't do that.
Movie.
Don't do that.
Give me a reference point for lighting, skin, how people move. It's just, they really lean into it. And then when the mummy parade starts coming out at the end, I'm like, all right, with this fucking shit. So many goddamn mummies.
What do you think about the big mouth move that he does a lot? He opens his mouth very, very wide and very in a bunch of different forms.
It's like someone did a bunch of coke and just went crazy with the Photoshop lasso tool. It's absolutely terrible. It's just that sort of thing is just CGI for CGI's sake. Like, what if he opens his mouth real big and bees come out of it? And when he barks, he shoots bees at you. It's dumb. It just feels like they were given a giant stack of money and kind of like a nonprofit at the end of the fiscal year. They're like, shit, where are we going to put all this money? What if his mouth opens real big?
Did you think any of it was scary? Good?
No, I didn't.
Not like really scary, but like, ooh, that's pretty creepy.
Thank you for asking. Still, stand by my original statement. No,
I'm gonna give him a little bit, especially when he first comes to life.
Maybe there's a few jump scares that might have been effective in a dark theater, and I'm primed to see it. But the CGI is just so distracting that it really hurts the scare factor.
Oh yeah,
Damon, I feel like
Damon, what were you doing in 1999? Thank you very much.
I think we would have both known that I was really working to control my acne. And really trying to get this heterosexuality off the ground. I really think I can nail it this summer.
To be fair, so was I. I was trying.
I do have a note here. It says, Imhotep's priests, sad. Because I think that was actually one of the few times where they were like, we can't do CGI mummies here. Just get some guys in toilet paper. And they look much like that. It felt like the Thriller video when the zombies just start, creeping around. But before they start doing the choreography, it looked a shambles.
You didn't get to the best part, guys. You got to do the dance.
Oh, you're just going to be, stumbling around?
I want to talk about my favorite character, Winston, the Royal Air Force pilot.
I do want to talk about him. I also want to talk about Benny, and then we can move into, how the native Egyptians are treated in this movie.
Okay.
Goody!
So there's a drunken pilot that they meet at the bar, and they eventually hire him to fly them in to Hamunaptra.
Hummel figurines, yeah.
Hamunaptra. And he's just a delight. That's all. Is just kind of clearly reliving his glory days and kind of always complaining about or kind of grousing about things. And then they hire him and he's like, what does this have to do with the Royal Air Force? And they're like, nothing. And he's like, ooh, just wants an adventure, and he dies. Yeah,
he's sort of treated like the guy who's been put on an outpost that's really boring. Nothing ever happens in Cairo, I guess.
Yeah.
And so he jumps at the opportunity to just fly anywhere for anyone, and even strap two poor fucking saps onto his wings and fly a biplane into a sandstorm. He does die. He's given a very long, slow, honorable death in this movie.
Into the quicksand.
As I will get to, kills many people without much concern. But this person who's in two scenes and is a colonialist drunk gets like a proper Viking funeral practically. And I'm like, and it's very much at the time when in the movie when you're like, when are we going to get to the fireworks factory? Come on, let's go. I get it. Yeah, that's sad that the old man was drunk and he died, but let's go.
That's too bad. Let's go.
All right, everyone, pay your respects, but we got to get on the road. And I hope all you peed. I'm not stopping again until we get to Hamunaptra. Hamunaptra. Let's talk about Benny. I want to say that Benny, while is a white actor playing an Egyptian or some guy with an accent.
It's not really clear where Benny's from.
He is sort of this weird mix of comic relief and then secondary antagonist. I don't know if the movie's exactly sure what they want to do with him. He does get a funny scene though, when he's face-to-face with Imhotep for the first time, and he holds up a crucifix necklace, and he starts, praying to God to protect him, and the mummy just keeps advancing on him, and he just, reaches into his collar again and just pulls out a whole slew of necklaces with
he's got all the
number of religious iconography on them. Eventually, he says some Hebrew, and Imhotep, I guess, remembers that as the language of the slaves. And then I guess he probably is like, oh, yeah, how did they kill us way back when? I might use that one, that old chestnut, those 10 chestnuts again. Or 8 to 9 of those chestnuts. Even Imhotep was like, I'm not going to kill a bunch of babies. What the fuck is that about?
Ouch.
They don't have any choice in this. What is wrong with you?
No one would do that.
No fucking monster would do that. So let's talk about, I touched on there's a white actor playing Benny who is greedy, opportunistic, betrays all his friends, pretty much the only Egyptian in this movie that, well, I guess aside from the mysterious
guy
committee that just hangs out around Hamunaptra to protect it, but do a really shitty job of it, I guess.
Yeah.
But Benny is sort of the main Egyptian that we encounter, and he's terrible person. And then we meet these sort of good guys, these guys who are protecting Hymenoptera, but the movie kills them with abandon, and then when they finally join forces with Rick O'Connell et al., they seem kind of fine with them, even though many dozens of their men have been killed by this group of white devils. And then the movie...
Don't forget the warden. We got the warden as well.
Oh, the warden, who is consistently described as smelling bad. He also sexually assaults Rachel Weisz at one point, and he's the first guy killed, if I'm remembering correctly, in the expedition at least. He finds the scarab beetle, and it goes under him, Roger Rabbit or Bugs Bunny style, and gets eaten from the inside out. I guess you shouldn't have been so lecherous, Egyptian man. And then this was the one that just really killed me, was during the boils scene, and we all know that boils make us devoted to Imhotep, make us zombies. Then the movie's like, oh, they're zombies? I guess we can run them down with abandon. And they're just driving cars through streets full of brown faces. It is... I mean, we talked about Indiana Jones, and Indiana Jones has its own problems with dealing with the native peoples of the places that Indiana Jones is robbing, essentially. But it never felt as, and, people might disagree with me, but this feels taking particular glee in hurting brown bodies and sort of using stereotypes for these characters. I mean, at least Indiana Jones had fucking Sala in two of those movies.
That scene where they're driving cars through the quote-unquote zombies, who are people with boils, who are under... They are
Good point. They're just normal people with boils.
Normal people with boils. We don't know anything about this curse, whether they can come out from under this spell that Imhotep has them under. We don't know any of that. And we had just come from a scene where Rachel Weisz was like, they released this Rachel and Rachel's character. I wish I could remember her name because it's not the actress. It's not the actress's fault. Rachel Weisz's character and Rick.
Evelyn. Isn't her name Evelyn?
Evie. Yeah. So
Evelyn Carnahan. Evie, yeah.
So Evie and Rick had unleashed this terror upon the world. It's pretty much their fault.
Exclusively.
It is their fault. And at one point, Evie says, well, yes, we need to take care of this, but not at the cost of innocent lives. And then it's 2 scenes later, they're barreling down the street, just knocking these people, presumably innocent people who are granted under mind and control. But we don't know anything about this curse. And I was just like, well, what about those people?
It just felt like an excuse for the movie. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of scenes like this in plenty of movies, but this seemed particularly uncomfortable because they're nameless people. They're not, people, any characters we've been introduced to. They're just the people of Cairo that are just around this fort. And it's hard to just take down that almost everyone in this movie who is a white person is the heroes, and everyone else are the villains. They are the native Egyptians that the white people are either colonizing or just, stealing from in terms of taking their artifacts. Another scene I forgot was, and this is maybe sort of a meta scene, but taken as a whole, it still doesn't help matters. There's, of course, the equivalent of Carrie Elway's Tornado Chasers, the other archaeological dig team who are trying to find stuff before Rick O'Connell and friends. And they are about to open a cartouche or rock thing.
A fiduciary cartouche.
Don't be a douche and open the cartouche. And they're like, ooh, let's open this. And then someone's like, oh, wait. You know what? There were a lot of traps that Seti the First would have laid. So why don't we just have some of the diggers do it? And so then they have these Egyptian men open the cartouche. And of course, they're immediately scalded with acid. And we get this weird scene where ah! And then they fall down immediately. But don't worry, the drunk pilot gets a touching send-off. This two scenes. In fact, every white person who dies gets this sweet send-off. The 2 guys that I call Tex and Tex, who are on the opposing team and eventually become friends with Brendan Fraser, they get, it's so sad that they've been overrun by zombies or, sucked dry. Don't say sucked dry. By Imhotep.
It's been a long time. It's been a long 3,000 years, Damon.
Saw you on Grindr, which is different in 1920s Egypt. You
It's just
left
like-
you left a note in the sand, and someone else saw it. They'd know where to meet you.
It's just a corn cob and
Hand, owl, foot, a couple of wavy lines.
Yeah,
it's just
on one hand,
taking
it's like
particular glee. I feel like.
yes, it is, and I think they, at the time at least, they would argue they're kind of nodding to the adventure stories of old and the original Mummy, but it was like, yeah, that was a problem in those movies too. It's a problem in Indiana Jones.
You can nod to that and like also
Yes.
you don't have to just nod to it. You can also then revise it. And I
Right.
feel like I'm not trying to defend Indiana Jones too much, but there are like people of color who do help Indiana Jones.
Right.
At the very least. I mean, I'm not saying,
It's basically just the guy from
they're fucking W.E.B. Du Bois, but I mean, they're making an effort to like give these people some character, whereas this is just like, fuck them.
It's basically only the guy in black. I don't actually remember his name. They don't give his name in this movie, but they
Did they
in
not
later
give him a
movies.
name?
No, he's in the credits as I remember reading about this. Like he's in the credits as his name, but he's not in the. And I think he actually doesn't get named until the next movie.
Oh yeah, Ardith Bay. The actor's name is Oded Fair.
Ardith Bay. Yeah. So it's basically only him as far as like a person of color who's like kind of an active participant. And he plays like this sort of like, I don't really understand his deal either, because like their whole mission, his whole army is like, he has a very small army of people that are like helping. Their like mission in life is to basically keep people from
doing what they've done.
Hymenoptera,
Yeah.
and from releasing this mummy upon the world, and they do a really bad job at all of it. But shortly after encountering Brendan Fraser's expedition, they're like, "I respect you," which I don't understand why.
Even
Like,
though they're the
why-
absolute worst.
Other than he's the main character of the movie, I don't understand why. Like, what has he
And
done?
he's killed many of your men.
Yeah,
He's literally done the one thing that your job was to stop. And they're like, you know what? We're going to team up with you guys.
yeah. It's very strange.
I was just going to say, my last note is this was just more of a small pet peeve with the movie that I wanted to bring up. So if you wanted to keep talking about that, I won't stop you.
No, go ahead.
This movie has, I feel like this is almost the antithesis to the thing that you hate in movies, where someone, comes up with a really convoluted plan and they say it's the only way.
It's the only way.
This is at the end of the movie. Rachel Weisz is tied down Olive Oil style. She's about to be stabbed, and once she's stabbed or something, the movie literally explains. Once he does that, he will be invincible, and there'll be no way to stop the mummy from doing his evil deeds, like fucking his girlfriend, I guess.
Yeah, seems like all he wants to do is be with his girl.
Just let him have it. And he's like raising the knife to stab her, and then just like Jonathon, the brother, walks in with the Book of Life, and instead of just like pushing the knife down into her chest, he's like, I better take care of this first.
Right.
I'm like, but if you stab her, that will be moot. Why don't you just don't lay the cards so that I can tell what the trick is. That's all I'm here for a dumb experience. But if you make it too dumb, I start to realize I'm here for a dumb experience. Meet me halfway, movie.
Speaking of experiences, when you were did you go to Universal Studios when you guys were in Florida?
Oh yeah, we went to Transphobia Land while we were there.
Transphobia Land?
A Harry Potter world.
Oh, yes. Did you go to the...
The Mummy Ride is actually the best thing that's ever come out of the Mummy movies.
It's awesome.
There's a fake ending. It's great.
I forgot about it until Lauren was like, are you going to talk about the Mummy Ride? And I was like, oh shit, that was really fun. I forgot about that. It's a very good ride. If you guys go to Universal Studios, highly recommend it.
Surprisingly good ride. We were there and we were just sort of, we got there really early in the morning and we had sort of ridden the Harry Potter rides. And we were just sort of like looking what else we could do. And we saw the Mummy Ride and we were like, well, just seeing the Mummy, I was like, what year is this? Why is there a mummy ride? Not even the updated Tom Cruise mummy, but this is just like Brendan Fraser mummy. And all the videos when you're in line are still like Brendan Fraser, obviously like contractually obligated to, be in costume and do a video for the Universal Studios ride. And I was like, this is going to be so dumb. And then it was actually one of the, if not the best roller coaster at the park. The best moment is there's a fake ending where your car comes to a stop and they have this little fake, and they have a real exit sign saying, this way, please exit the cart. But the cart doesn't move. And then the ceiling catches fire and the wall in front of you drops. And then there's another minute of rolling and coasting for a bit.
So great.
It was really surprisingly good. And when it stopped, me and Tyler were like, that was much better than it had any right to be. This is the fucking Mummy from 1999.
Well, we're going to go to the verdict. We'll tell you what we think about the movie, but I can tell you right now, the ride was great.
That's my verdict.
And you can take that to Universal Studios, the bank of... Never mind. Damon.
Yeah.
What is your verdict?
Thank you. No. Your inner child is an idiot. This movie is how you say, not good. It really, doubles down on the CGI in a way that wasn't a great payoff, wasn't the best of investments when it came to mummification-centered movies. And also, it's fucking racist as fuck. It's uncomfortably, using brown bodies as just fucking cannon fodder to a point that even a white guy like myself cannot ignore. It is uncomfortable to watch. So, yeah, I'm going to have to say no. No to the Mummy. He's got a great ass for a mummy.
Yeah.
A great ass for a person. Shouldn't have to qualify it. But this is a no good. No thank you. No thank you. I couldn't possibly.
This one's a little tough for me, actually, and surprisingly, because I agree with everything you said.
Thank you.
100%.
That's all I want to hear.
100%. I have no defense of any of that. However, because this movie knows it's stupid and kind of leans into it, there's a lot of zoixiness. It is very even more old school than Indiana Jones in a lot of ways, even though it came out 13 years later or whatever. I don't remember when the first Indiana Jones came out. 83 maybe. Anyway,
I think 84. Yeah.
It knows what it is and is kind of leaning into it. And so it's hard to be it depends on what kind of movie you think you're going into watching this. If you think it's a swashbuckling adventure with interesting characters, no. It is a swashbuckling adventure. Not interesting characters, but it is very
Swash
stupid.
will be buckled.
It is very stupid.
Characters will not be interesting.
And it is racist in the way, in the vein of a lot of these kinds of movies where, any person of color, any sort of quote unquote native of the area they're in this case, Egypt, are just just total cannon fodder, and it's pretty disturbing and sometimes, but also it was pretty fun. I hate to say it, not the cannon fodder part, but just the
Can
general
you add a
adventure?
sentence between the cannon fodder line and the other line?
Yeah. But also the movie was kind of fun. And so I'm trying to think of, in the intro of this episode, I spoke about my girlfriend at the time in college thought this was one of her favorite movies. And I remember being like, what? I feel like I want to speak to that. You know what I mean? It's if this was your favorite movie and you came back to it later, I don't think you're going to all of a sudden be like, this holds up. This is great. I think it's going to be this is pretty stupid. But it's also we were old enough to know better. You know what I mean? By the time this came out, we were, 17 years old or something. And how old were we? Yeah, 17.
Yeah, we would have been 17 or 18.
So it's hard for me to go. I'm going to say your inner child is an idiot. I'm gonna side with you, even though I do think there are fun moments, and it's not a movie that takes itself seriously, so that makes it a little bit more fun. But I think the racist elements and the really, really, really intense use of CGI just kind of puts it over the edge for me. So what do you guys think? Your inner child is an idiot at gmail.com. You can call us or text us 615-576-0525. We want to thank my friend Russ for the use of his song Top of Two for our ad music. Damon?
Yes.
What were you know about?
No, I just remembered I should open the patrons thing, but for some reason I felt the need to do that audibly.
I'll let you take this first one.
Of course, we want to thank our...
good. Yeah, you want to do it? Go ahead.
I can say things too, you know.
Yeah, you can.
Of course, we want to thank our patrons, including Dr. Malcolm's Heaving Bosom, a new patron. Welcome.
Just Cuz.
Heather Tuggle.
Tyler Richardson.
Captain Jean-Luc Picard.
Scalfasaurus.
Karen Curd.
Lindsey Nell.
Jonathon Day.
The Zesty.
Jacob Grimm. I'm going to meet your energy.
Particle Man.
Damon's Australian accent.
Dramatically placed hot dog.
Larissa Maestro.
T. Smith.
Jeremy Powlen.
Kevin from Cleveland.
Hizoner the Mayor.
Dan McIntyre.
Oh, wait, hold on. I have to scroll down a little bit. Justin Shea.
The supreme ruler of this podcast. Thank you all very, very much. We really appreciate it. If you want to support like them, patreon.com/your inner child is an idiot. Do you want to list the plagues of Exodus while we're
I'd like to give this a shot. This reminds me of the date where I named the Supreme Court justices and he never called me again.
Was this the guy that sniffed gas, or was this a different guy?
No, a different guy. don't want to talk about it. Okay, so you got Water into Blood. Great opener.
Classic. Yeah, it's good.
From Yahweh. Good
it's
opener.
Good,
you want to start strong.
Yeah, it's strong, but it's also like not the most serious one. You can't just come out the gate with the worst one, you know?
Yeah, you don't want to start with killing kids.
Right.
You want to end with that. That's when everyone thought you left the stage and they're still clapping, and then you come back and kill everyone's firstborn child.
You play your biggest hit, is what you do.
Killing people en masse. That is Yahweh's biggest hit.